Welcome to Nightmare Files, where real horror and chilling mysteries come to life. From eerie footage to unsettling stories, prepare for nightmares you won't forget. Have you ever checked your security camera and seen something that shouldn't be there? A man standing at your door for hours. Not knocking, not moving, just staring right at the camera. A closet door creaking open, slowly, at 3 a.m. But when you check this, there's no one inside. We install security cameras to protect ourselves, but sometimes what they capture is something we were never meant to see. Here are 10 terrifying security camera warnings. After watching this, you might want to turn off your cameras forever. I've always had a habit of checking my security cameras before going to bed. Not because I'm paranoid, but when you live alone, you learn to be cautious. I always thought, if someone was lurking outside my house at night, at least I would know. Everything seemed normal. Until that night. At exactly 2:47 a.m., my phone buzzed. A motion detection alert from my security camera. I picked up my phone. The camera feed showed a man standing right outside my front door. He wasn't knocking. He wasn't moving. He was just standing there, completely still, staring directly into the camera. He was wearing a long coat. His face was partly hidden in the shadows. For 10 minutes, he didn't move a single muscle. A strange feeling crawled up my spine. I tapped the camera mic and asked, "Can I help you?" No response, but his smile grew wider. I decided to call the police, but as soon as I looked back at the camera feed, he was gone. I rewound the footage. A second ago, he was still there. And then, in a single frame, he disappeared. Moti dua, waruski rar, sinarai, washkura. Way, no turning around. Just gone. The next morning, I checked outside. No footprints, no signs that anyone had been there last night. But when I opened the camera app for one last look, I noticed something I hadn't seen before. The moment I asked him, "Can I help you?" his lips moved, like he was answering me, but there was no sound. I never believed in ghosts, superstition, paranormal encounters. That kind of thing was just stories to me. But after that night, I wasn't so sure anymore. I worked the night shift at a small 24-hour convenience store on the outskirts of Manchester. It wasn't a busy area, especially at night, just a few truck drivers stopping for coffee, maybe a drunk customer or two. But mostly, it was just me and the silence. At exactly 2:30 a.m., I heard a soft beep. Motion detected on the security camera. I glanced at the screen. Someone was standing in one of the aisles. But I hadn't heard the door chime. The person stood completely still, back turned to the camera. They weren't moving, not reaching for anything, just standing. I frowned. Maybe it was a drunk customer acting weird. I cleared my throat and called out, "Can I help you?" No answer. They didn't move. Didn't turn around, sir. Just stood there. I glanced down at my phone for just a second. When I looked back at the screen, the aisle was empty, but I hadn't heard the door open. They couldn't have left. I stepped out from behind the counter, my heart pounding. Hello? No response. The store was empty. But then I noticed something that made my blood run cold. The security monitor was still running. I rewound the footage to see where the person had gone. The screen showed me standing behind the counter, but the aisle, it was empty. There had never been anyone there. For a moment, I just stood there trying to make sense of it. And then, the screen glitched. For a fraction of a second, the image distorted. And in that single frozen frame, I saw it, a shadow, standing directly behind me. Once you rent an apartment for a cheap price, there's always a reason why. Maybe it's in a bad neighborhood, maybe there's a plumbing issue. Or maybe it's something else. The landlord only had one rule: don't open the closet door at night. I laughed when I heard it. I thought he was joking, but the way he looked at me, I knew he wasn't. The first few nights were normal, nothing strange. Then, one night I woke up. I don't know why. There was no noise, no sudden movement. Just a feeling. Like I wasn't alone. I sat up in bed, letting my eyes adjust to the darkness. The room was still, silent. Then, I heard it. A breath. Soft. Faint. But coming from inside my room. I turned my head slowly, toward the closet. The door was slightly open. Just a crack, but I was sure I had closed it before going to sleep. I stared at the gap, my heart pounding, and then I saw something. A pair of eyes, watching me from the darkness inside. I bolted upright and turned on the light. The closet door was shut. I told myself I had imagined it, that it was just a nightmare, but I needed proof. I had a security camera in my room. It recorded every night. I rewound the footage, watching closely. And at exactly 3:12 a.m., the closet door slowly creaked open. A hand, pale and thin, reached out from the darkness. And just before I turned on the light, a face, smiling, looking directly at the camera. Have you ever stepped out of your room in the middle of the night and felt like someone was standing at the end of the hallway? That feeling of a pair of eyes watching your every step. I never believed in ghosts, but after that night, I'm not so sure anymore. I rented a small apartment in an old residential building in Paris. Cheap. Nothing special. But ever since I moved in, I started feeling like something was off. Some nights, I would wake up in the middle of my sleep feeling like someone was standing outside my door. At first, I thought I was imagining things, but then I started hearing footsteps. Very slow. Very light. Every time I opened the door to check, the hallway was completely empty. One night I decided to install a camera right outside my door, just to prove to myself that I was imagining things. I went to bed as usual, but at exactly 2:45 a.m., my phone vibrated. The camera detected motion. I opened the app, and I saw it. A figure, standing motionless at the end of the hallway. It didn't move, it didn't turn its head, it didn't leave. Just standing there, staring straight at the camera. I tried to look closer, but the dim lighting kept its face hidden in the shadows. But there was one strange thing. That figure had no shadow beneath its feet. A chill ran down my spine. I rewound the camera footage, playing it back, frame by frame. There was no one in the hallway. Then, suddenly in a single frame, the figure appeared. Not walking in, not gradually showing up, it was just there, as if it had been standing there all along. But only in that moment could I see it. I stared at the screen. My heart pounded. I looked down at my door, the distance between me and that figure, only 5 meters. I turned back to my phone screen and I realized something terrifying. With every passing second, the figure moved closer. 5 meters, 4 meters, 3 meters. The screen suddenly went black. The camera lost signal. I locked my door tightly, held my phone in my hands, tried not to breathe too loudly. Silence. No footsteps. Nothing at all. But then, I heard something. A knock, light, rhythmic. 3 times. I didn't dare open the door. I didn't dare move. The knocking stopped. I waited 1 minute, 2 minutes, 10 minutes. Nothing happened. Finally, I gathered all my courage and reopened the camera app. The screen came up. No one in the hallway. I let out a sigh of relief. But when I checked the recorded footage again, the figure had never left. It was still there, right outside my door. But somehow, I couldn't see it with my own eyes. Every hospital has its stories, strange occurrences, unexplained events. But there's one rule that every night shift nurse here knows. Never go into room 404. I never believed in ghosts. I'm a nurse. I believe in science. But that changed on my shift that night. Everything was normal. I was making my rounds, checking patients. And then, at exactly 3:33 a.m., the hospital intercom crackled to life. "Please help me, I'm in room 404. I froze. Room 404. That room doesn't exist. There is no room 404 in this hospital. It was sealed off years ago. I turned to my co-worker, but she just shook her head, whispering, "Don't go. Don't answer." But I couldn't ignore it. I grabbed my flashlight and walked down the empty corridor. My heart pounded as I approached room 403, and right next to it was a door. No room number, just a door, old worn. I tried the handle. Locked. I crouched down, peering through the small gap beneath the door. And that's when I saw him. A man, standing in the middle of the room, wearing a hospital gown, muttering something under his breath. But the worst part, his feet weren't touching the ground. He was floating. I stumbled back, gasping for air. And then, I made the mistake of looking up again. His face was right at the gap. I screamed and ran down the hall. When I looked back, the door to room 404 was gone, as if it had never been there. The next morning, I checked the hospital security cameras. At exactly 3:33 a.m., the footage showed me standing in front of a blank wall, talking to someone who wasn't there. But for just one frame, in a brief flicker of static, a man was standing right next to me. Hotels are places where people come and go, but not everyone. I leaves. I've traveled a lot for work. I've stayed in countless hotels. But there's one that I will never go back to. I arrived in Las Vegas late one summer night. I hadn't booked a room in advance, so I took whatever was available. The receptionist handed me a key. Room 807. It was cheaper than I expected. I should have questioned that. But I was tired. I just wanted to sleep. The moment I stepped inside the room, I felt it. Something was off. The air was heavy, stale. Like someone had been in there just moments before me. I shook it off, took a shower, went to bed. At around 2 a.m., I woke up suddenly. Something wasn't right. The room was silent. Too silent. But I could feel it. Someone was watching me. I turned my head towards the mirror facing my bed. And there, in the reflection, a woman, standing in the corner of the room. I spun around, but when I looked, the corner was empty. I told myself it was a dream, just my tired mind playing tricks on me. But then, I heard it. A knock, 3 slow knocks on my door. I checked the peephole. The hallway was empty. I hesitated, but I opened the door anyway. Nothing. No one. But when I turned back towards my bed, the bathroom door was open. I knew I had closed it before going to sleep. I grabbed my phone and checked the hotel's security camera feed, and that's when I saw her. At the end of the hallway, a woman in a long dress, standing completely still, facing the camera. I leaned closer, trying to see her face. And then, in a blink, she was closer. Not walking, not moving, just suddenly closer. I slammed the door and locked it. I sat frozen on my bed, my heart racing. I forced myself to check the mirror again. She was right behind me. I've always walked home late at night. I thought I was used to the silence of the city after dark. But that night, I wish I'd never left the office. I live alone in a quiet neighborhood. By day, the street feels normal. But at night, it changes. The houses go dark. The world goes silent. It's just me, the streetlights, and the shadows. That night, I left work at around 2 a.m. I took the same route home. But as I turned onto my street, I saw him. A man standing under a flickering streetlight. He wasn't moving. He wasn't looking around, just standing there, waiting. I tried to ignore him. I walked faster. But as I passed him, I felt it. His eyes on me, not just watching, staring, like he could see right through me. I sped up, my house just a few steps away. I glanced back once. He was still there, but now he was facing me. I rushed inside, locking the door behind me. My heart was pounding. I pulled the curtains shut, but I needed to know. Was he still there? I opened my phone, checked my security camera feed. He was still standing under the streetlight. But then I noticed something strange. Every time the screen flickered, he got closer. I looked out my window. The street was empty. I checked the camera again. He was at my front gate. I turned on the porch light, looked outside once more. No one. But when I looked back at my camera feed, he was standing inside my house. Working the night shift at a gas station isn't as quiet as you might think. It's not the drunks or the late-night travelers. It's the people who don't seem real. I was working alone that night. It was slow. The last customer left at around 2:30 in 9 a.m. Since then, it was just me. The humming of the fluorescent lights and the occasional flicker of the security monitors. At 3:15 a.m., my phone buzzed. Motion detected at pump 3. I looked at the screen. A man was standing by the gas pump. But no car, No one had pulled in. He was just there, standing still. I frowned. Maybe he walked in from the road, but that didn't make sense. There was nothing for miles. I turned on the intercom. Need any help out there? Silence. The man didn't move. He was facing the store, but I couldn't see his face. It was like the shadows swallowed him. I checked the security monitor again. That's when I noticed something. Every time the screen flickered, he was closer. At first, he was by the pump. Then, by the trash can. Then, right outside the door. But when I looked out the window, there was no one there. I locked the doors, stepped back behind the counter, but then my phone buzzed again. Motion detected. Inside the store. I looked at the camera feed. The man was standing right behind me. I've lived alone for years. I always felt safe until that night. I don't remember falling asleep, but when I woke up, I knew something was wrong. The room was silent, completely still, but I felt it. Someone was watching me. I turned my head toward the window, and my heart stopped. A man, standing just outside. He wasn't moving. He wasn't knocking. He was just there, staring at me through the glass. His face was hidden in the shadows, but I could see it. A faint, twisted smile. I wanted to scream, but I couldn't move. I reached for my phone, my hands shaking. I opened my security camera app. I zoomed in on the window, and that's when I saw it. He had no eyes, just two hollow black sockets, staring straight at me. I flipped on the light instantly, but when I looked back at the window, he was gone. I ran to check the front door, still locked. No footprints outside, no sign that anyone had been there. But when I turned back towards my room, the window was open. Driving long distances at night, and it does something to your mind. The empty roads, the endless darkness, and sometimes you see things you were never meant to see. I've been a truck driver for years. I've driven through almost every state. But there's one highway, and I will never take again. A deserted stretch of road in Arizona. That night it was just me and the highway, no cars, no lights. Just the glow of my headlights cutting through the darkness. At exactly 3:45 a.m., I saw something ahead. A figure, standing in the middle of the road. I slowed down, my heart racing. They weren't moving, not signaling for help, just standing there, watching me. I honked my horn. No reaction. I slowed to a stop, my headlights fully illuminating them. That's when I saw it. They had no face. Just smooth, featureless skin where eyes, a nose, and a mouth should be. I slammed on the gas, swerving around them. I looked in my rearview mirror, and my stomach dropped. They were still standing there. But then, they started moving. Not running, not walking, gliding, keeping pace with my truck. I pushed the pedal to the floor, 80 miles per hour, 90 inches. But they kept up. I turned up the radio, trying to drown out my own panicked breathing. And that's when I heard it. A voice, crackling through the static. "Let me in." I refused to look in the mirror again. I just kept driving. And then, suddenly, they were gone. I didn't stop until I reached the next town. I parked under the bright lights of a gas station, my hands shaking. I stepped out of my truck, took a deep breath, and then I saw it. A single handprint smudged onto my passenger side window. These were 10 of the most chilling security camera stories ever recorded. Cameras are meant to keep us safe, but sometimes they show us things we were never supposed to see. Have you ever checked your security footage and found something you couldn't explain? Have you ever experienced something terrifying yourself? If so, tell us your story in the comments. Or, if you have a real-life horror experience you want to share, send it to us. Your story, it might be in the next video. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And next time you check your security cameras, make sure you're really ready to see what's there. Welcome to Nightmare Files, where real horror and chilling mysteries come to life. From eerie footage to unsettling stories, prepare for nightmares you won't forget.